The Lowe Post is brought to you by Goodyear, helping you discover the road ahead. Goodyear, more driven.
And now, the Lowe Post.
Welcome to the Lowe Post podcast, where before we bring on the one and only Stan Van Gundy, I want to address what happened in the Nuggets-Clippers series, because 48 hours later, I am still digesting it. I don't remember 3 consecutive games quite like that in following basketball. And they were all similar, but it got worse and worse for the Clippers. And it ended up in Game 7 with just an absolutely unconscionable performance. Kawhi Leonard and Paul George combining for 0 points in the fourth quarter that defined their season. Some open looks missed, but also some open layups missed. When we talk about a make-a-miss league, we don't normally talk about layups. It was absolutely stunning how incoherent and disorganized, and by the end, out of it, just flat out of it, the team that many of us, including me, picked to win the NBA championship season looked. And the first thing you need to do is credit the Denver Nuggets, because for a team to become broken like the Clippers were, somebody has to break them. And the Nuggets broke the Los Angeles Clippers. They actively broke the Clippers. The Clippers did not self-destruct on their own out of nothing. It took a team that was fearless and hungry and confident and ultra-skilled to break them. And that centered around Nikola Jokic. And it's time to recognize what Nikola Jokic is in the playoffs. An absolute, flat-out superstar. Here are Nikola Jokic's numbers through 2 playoff series. And by the way, there are 2 playoff years. And of course, since every series goes 7 games for the Nuggets, that's 28 playoff games. 25 points, 12 rebounds, 7 assists, on 51, 42, 84 shooting. That is absolutely ridiculous. The most common comparison for Jokic, I think, since he came into the league has been Marc Gasol, and you get why, sort of, with apologies to both, sometimes a little bit, pudgy-ish. I mean, pudgy by like basketball standards, not human standards. Big guys who don't really jump and are savant-level passers. But I think Jokic is becoming... Well, first of all, Jokic is his own player. There is nobody like him. But I think in terms of what he is in the playoffs, he's almost becoming more like Dirk Nowitzki. And I say that because he's the big guy for which there is no answer. If you put a slower center on him, in the playoffs he decides to just rain threes. 42% career on many more attempts than in the regular season. If you put a smaller guy on him, faster guy on him, to run him off the arc, he goes into the post and just destroys you. Just eats you alive. Pass out of double teams, shoot floaters, layups, whatever. Trap Jamal Murray on the pick and roll. He's shooting floaters. He even has, to credit the great Adam Morris, he even has the Sombor shuffle, which is his equivalent of Dirk's one-legged fadeaway. He has every shot. He shoots well from everywhere. He's good at all of them, and he's the best passing big man of all time. He completely broke the Clippers. He panicked the Clippers. They went from one defense to another defense to another defense to just shrugging their shoulders and giving up because they had no idea what to do against Nikola Jokic. It was an absolutely incredible performance, and that is what he's becoming. Even more similarly to Dirk, the Nuggets have quietly emerged as one of the best crunch time teams in the league, and Nikola Jokic is one of the best crunch time offensive players in the league, which is a very rare standing for a big man to have. Crunch time scorers specifically, and one that Dirk Nowitzki also held. Here are some numbers. Denver in the last 3 minutes of close games in the last 3 seasons with the score within 3 points. This season, 19-10. Last season, 27-11. The season before, 21-17. Jokic himself in those situations, 3 minutes, 3 points. This season, 20 of 41 from the floor, plus 53. That's third best in the league, plus minus. Last season, 16 of 31 from the floor, plus 74. Number 1 in the league. And of course, he put Utah away with a crazy flailing floater, whatever that was, that only Nikola Jokic can do. And the Nuggets are tough as all hell. They are mentally tough. They're physically tough. They may not look tough, but they are tough. And I wrote this before Game 7. They proved it to themselves and to us, if we were watching, down the stretch of the 2017-18 season when they had to win every game just to have a prayer of making the playoffs, to set up a one-game winner-take-all showdown against Minnesota, which they almost won on the road. And remember, Minnesota that year when they had Jimmy Butler was like the third best team in the West. That was a real team. And they did it. They won every game up until the end, and they took Minnesota to overtime, and they lost. Every team has like sort of an origin moment where you look at it and say, oh, that's when you knew this was interesting. Like for the Warriors, it was that 2013 playoff series against the Spurs where they're like, oh my God, they're kind of scaring the Spurs. They took the Spurs to 6 games. It might have gone longer had Andrew Bogut not gotten hurt. I'm not saying the Nuggets are going to be the Warriors. No one is ever going to be maybe no one will ever be the Warriors in our lifetime again. That's how dominant they became once they got KD. But to me, that run at 2018 was their origin story as a team that should have been respected for its toughness and resiliency. And that's, of course, what Jamal Murray said after the game when he listed off a group of media members that had apparently doubted the Denver Nuggets. That included me, which, of course, was crazy and blew up my phone. And Jamal Murray's right. I picked the Clippers in 5. So I guess I doubted the Nuggets. I don't think it's any great sin to pick the team you think is going to win the championship in the second round of the playoffs where everybody is good, but I did it. He's right. And the cool thing about Jamal Murray is some players are like fake offended by all those picks you see when they screenshot all the ESPN picks and they're all against the team. They're fake offended. They need something to motivate them. Jamal Murray is like legitimately offended and shocked that people don't think his team can win. That's how much self-belief he has. That's how much belief he has in Jokic, in their team, in their coach. There is something amazing going on in the culture in Denver. I credit Mike Malone, Tim Connolly, Jokic, Murray. It starts at the top when those things, the Kroenkes, I guess, it starts at the top when those things are going on. So shout out to Jamal Murray. You're right. I didn't pick you. Name names, my friend. You proved all of us wrong. It does not change the fact that the Clippers completely collapsed. The on-court chemistry fell apart. And this is just, Paul George said after the game that this was not a championship or bust season for them. Maybe not. I mean, there's championship or bust is pretty high standards. But I'll tell you what, it was definitely don't blow a 3-1 lead in the second round to a lower-seeded team or bust. The Clippers traded 5 picks, 2 pick swaps, Danilo Gallinari and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who are 2 good players that are like left out often of the narrative of all the stuff the Clippers traded, to get these 2 players, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, who can be free agents after next season. So the pressure is on now. And after the game, it came out, our great Mark Spears reported that a bunch of the Clippers were fatigued, needed to come out after quick stints in the fourth quarter, this and that. And obviously there were mitigating circumstances. Montrezl Harrell had a family tragedy, had to leave the bubble. Lou Williams had to go to a funeral, left the bubble, came back, had to quarantine, as did Montrezl Harrell. I just... and the bubble is hard. When Paul George said he was feeling anxiety and stress in the bubble, I can't tell you how many people around the league have reached in private conversations with me have said he's speaking for a lot of us at every level. So it's hard, but every team is dealing with that circumstance. Maybe it's harder for some than others. Miami seems to want to play all their home games in the bubble from now on, but every team is dealing with it. Denver came with half a team. They played 4 centers at the same time during some of the seeding games because they didn't have anybody. Will Barton is still not playing for them. Even their coach got the coronavirus. So I don't want to hear any of that or so much of it because every team is dealing with it. And it's part of the reason why I think winning this title, as I wrote back in May, could go down, yes, with an asterisk, but as an asterisk that works as a badge of honor and not any mark of shame as people want it to be. And that's the other thing I want to bring up first. Number one, I'm already hearing Pablo Torre asked me about it on the ESPN Daily. The path is really clear for LeBron. The Bucks are gone. Clippers are gone. Wow. Is there going to be an asterisk if, does this denigrate his accomplishment if he wins, if the Lakers win? Number one, don't discount the Nuggets ever again. Number two, absolutely 1,000% no. LeBron is not responsible for the Clippers. He's not responsible for the Bucks. He is responsible for playing the game in front of him. Their starting guard, not point guard, but their most important starting guard, probably, maybe tied with Danny Green, didn't come to the bubble. They're facing the same sort of stress and mental health adversity as everybody else. They're soldiering on just like everybody else. There is no asterisk no matter who wins. None of that. Let's get to the Clippers stars real quickly. Paul George has been a punching bag for the last couple of years, and he's had some terrible elimination games in his career. Absolutely terrible. I'm rooting for Paul George next year because I appreciated his vulnerability in opening up the way he did about the bubble. And I also find his career arc a little strange. He's being mocked as way off P and pandemic P, and those are funny. Those are funny. And is now has the reputation of like a playoff choker, which is so strange to me because when he was 22 years old, he went toe-to-toe with LeBron James in the Eastern Conference Finals. He made a 3 at the buzzer, almost the literal buzzer, 0.7 seconds left in Game 1 of 2013 to send the Heat Pacers game to overtime, and then made 3 straight free throws with like a second or 2 seconds left to put the Pacers in the lead in overtime. LeBron won the game on a buzzer-beating layup. That was the series where LeBron had so much respect for what Paul George was doing in big moments that if you remember, there was a timeout in one of the games and LeBron and him high-fived, which you never see opponents do, or low-fived, I guess, because they knew we're having a moment. Like, Paul George has been that guy on the biggest stage. This is strange how his career has evolved in this way because it didn't start this way. And Kawhi, you want to bash Kawhi, that's fine. Did he cede the mantle of, am I a candidate for the best player in the world? Yeah, LeBron's the best player in the world still. When the chips are down, LeBron's the best player in the world. I even wrote that when I voted Giannis as MVP. It doesn't mean Giannis is the best player in the world. It just means over those 82 regular season games, he meant the most to his team. LeBron, when the chips are down, is the best player. Kawhi was coming for it. KD is coming for it. But Kawhi, this was a step back for him. But like a little ease up on the slander. The guy's a 2-time Finals MVP. Ain't many people who have done that in the history of basketball. So Kawhi doesn't get a pass. Nobody gets a pass. But let's not forget the stuff that he has done before, including in playoff runs where he wasn't the Finals MVP, like 2018 when he was destroying the super team Warriors in Game 1 before Zaza stepped on his foot. Regardless, though, next year is Armageddon for the Clippers. Next year it has to work. Has to. It is the most pressure, assuming they keep this team together, which I guess we'll see in the offseason. I have no intel. I've done no reporting. I've not even reached out to anyone at the Clippers there in Basketball Morning. Next year is Armageddon for them. It has to work, and if it doesn't, Sam Presti's going to be sitting there with all those picks like a guy who owns your house and is just waiting to move in. All right, let's bring on Stan Van Gundy to talk about the Western Conference Finals. Let's welcome in the one and only Stan Van Gundy, currently absolutely killing it on TNT. Just fantastic work. And I'm thrilled to break down the Western Conference Finals between the Los Angeles Lakers and the Denver Nuggets. How about that? What's up, Stan? How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Hanging in. Ready for a series I did not necessarily expect, but am happy to see because for years now, Nikola Jokic has been my favorite player to watch in the NBA, so I get to watch more Nikola Jokic. What was your level of surprise watching the Clippers-Nuggets series unfold?
I think I was as surprised as anybody. You know, they were up 3-1. They were up big in the second half of Game 5. They let it get away, and then you just figure, like, okay, they've learned their lesson, and sure enough, they're in Game 6, and they're up big again in the second half. And, you know, you don't think or at least I didn't think there was any possibility they were going to do what they did again. And then they do, and then you hit Game 7, and, you know, they never get that big lead, but they're up, 7 points early in the third quarter, and you're thinking, okay, this time, for sure, they're not going to let it. And then they just get absolutely blitzed and were never in the game the rest of the way. So I think anybody who says they're not surprised, even if you picked Denver, you had to be surprised with the way the series unfolded.
There are very few times now in the NBA where I'm just watching a game with my jaw agape, and usually it's for a spectacular individual performance where you know you're just lucky to be watching this. This was something I can't recall ever sort of feeling like that before. But anyway, the Clippers are gone. They have a lot to reckon with. Let's move on to the Nuggets and the Lakers. I'll go over the basics and then we'll get into it. Lakers, number 1 seed, regular season, 10th on offense, 3rd in defense. In the playoffs so far, they are 2nd on offense in their half-court offense, which was the big worry for them Well, they have discarded that worry right to the side of the road. They are up +6 points per 100 possessions in the half court versus the regular season. Denver, for the regular season, 5th in offense. So they were the quote-unquote better offensive team of the two, but not by much. 16th in defense. But since that first 4 games against Utah, where they looked like they frankly didn't belong in the playoffs at all, they are defending at a top 10-ish, top 8-ish level. They seem to be peaking at the right time. And so, we have 4 really compelling star players, 2 really good teams. When you're diving into this series, Stan, what's the first thing you looked at? What's the matchup that you looked at? What's the, system versus system matchup you looked at? Where's your starting point for this could be the pivot point of the series?
Well, I think just like it's been in the first 2 series, the question will come down to the Lakers. How are you going to guard those 2 guys? How are you going to guard Murray? Who are you going to put on him? How are you going to guard him in isolation situations? The big one, of course, is how you guarding the Murray-Jokic pick and roll, and then what are you doing with Jokic in the post? Because look, to me, it's amazing that Denver's gotten where they have been. They're just riding those 2 guys. I mean, Michael Porter Jr. has been good, and other guys have chipped in momentarily, but it's really been just the same 2 guys over and over and over again. And Utah couldn't get any handle on it. The Clippers couldn't get any handle on it. The Lakers are the best defensive team that they will have played. How are they going to play those things? That's when I turn on that game, game 1 on Friday, that's what I'm going to be looking for. How are the Lakers deciding to defend these situations? And then on the other hand, I'm interested to see Denver, who I don't even buy the defensive numbers of the last few games. I think the Clippers missed shots. I think the shots were there. I don't think the
layups, Stan.
I know.
I couldn't believe the layups.
I mean, Lou Williams. Really 2-line layup, quality layups, missing them. So I'm not buying Denver's defense. They've done it with their offense. Are they going to take away anything from the Lakers, or are they just going to try to outscore them with those 2 guys? I mean, that's sort of what I'm looking at when I turn on game 1 on Friday.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the defense, because I was talking to someone someone with the Nuggets a couple days ago, and they were saying, why do you think there's been doubt about us? Why do you think we're, as Coach Malone said, a cute team, but not a real contender? And I said, well, first of all, with all due respect, number 1, when you get to the final 8 teams in the playoffs, everybody's good. It's not disrespectful that someone picks you to lose to the Los Angeles Clippers. That's not a sign of disrespect. Everyone's good. Number 2, to me, one of the biggest overarching questions in the NBA is, what are the Nuggets on defense? 2 years ago, I think they were 23rd. Last year, they got all the way up to 10th, but they were allowing a ton of threes, a ton of corner threes, a ton of shots at the rim. And there was this question of was it fool's gold? Did they get lucky? This year, they slid all the way down to 19th or something, and we're trending the wrong way. So you look at the numbers going up and down, and I'm left to just say, I don't know, but it's kind of starting to look like you're just a little bit mediocre. Maybe you got lucky that one year. I'm not entirely sure. And if you're just average on defense, or even a little below average, and I'm not saying that's what the Nuggets are. I'm saying it's unclear. It's I can't look at the Nuggets and say that's a top 10 defensive team. I'm sure that they do it year after year after year. And until you answer that question, yeah, I think there is going to be a little, at least, confusion, if not doubt.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt about that. Now, I do think the part of their defensive improvement that has been real is Gary Harris coming back. He's their best perimeter defender. He's back. That certainly makes them better. I don't know that he even helps them a lot in this series unless they're going to play him on LeBron and give away that kind of size. I don't think those other guys need a great individual defender on them. But the biggest question with their defense, quite honestly, is Jokic. I mean, as great as he is offensively, he's not great defensively, and they have less flexibility on the defensive end of the floor than anyone else in the league because, number one, they can't go small. You can't decide if you're Michael Malone, like what the Lakers did to Houston in the last series, and we'll just take our centers and just sit them on the bench for the series. They can't do that. Jokic is their best player. And it's not like Jokic is gifted enough defensively to play multiple schemes defensively. Like, you're going to be limited in how much you can blitz with him. You're not going to be able to switch with him on good players. He's not going to be able to get up high and really affect the ball handler. He's going to play in that drop. He's not a great rim protector. And you just have to live with those things and build your defense around those things. And so to me, they're a team in a playoff series where you're looking at them every day. You're going to be able to find lines of attack against them. And as great as Michael Malone is as a coach, and he's done a fabulous job, he's really limited in how he can counter things. So that's going to be the question on them. And then if you can't stop somebody, well, obviously you have to do what they've done in the first two rounds, which is have unbelievable offensive performances by two guys. And those two guys can't have a bad game. They just can't. I mean, if they have a bad game, they lose, period. I mean, so they're going to have minimum 4 great games in this series. Great games. Not good games, great games.
Yeah, I mean, they survived Jamal having just a so-so series against the Clippers until Game 7 when he detonated. But Jokic was so good all the way through that it didn't matter. So you've hit on a couple interesting things there. Jokic is really interesting to me because I don't really think he likes playing like Brook Lopez defense because he just can't stop anybody. They get a runway and they just go over and through him. I like him. They've often played a very aggressive scheme where he's like up at the level, maybe even higher. That has always been a little too risky for me. I don't even know what to call this, but when he's up like a foot or a step and a half below the level of the screen, so he's up but not too far up, that to me looks like where he's most comfortable and the help defenders behind him are most comfortable. But to your general point, the rim when the Lakers have the ball is going to be one of the more important battlegrounds of the series because you're talking about Denver, I think, was in the regular season 22nd or 23rd in field goal percentage at the rim. The Lakers were first because they have LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and second in how often they shot at the rim. So if the Lakers are just getting to the basket all the time and Jokic is not providing enough resistance, that's going to be a red light sort of indicating problem for Denver. But does what I'm saying about Jokic make sense? Like, I don't think he's in the drop coverage. I think he's actually a little bit worse.
Yeah, I mean, it does make sense. I think for all those big guys, somebody coming at you full speed downhill is hard to defend. The real problem to me, if you're the Nuggets, in moving Jokic up is fouls. That's the bigger problem. So it's not just, what's the most effective defensive scheme for Jokic to play. It's which one protects him from fouls. And that's really the problem. If you look at a lot of these teams in terms of pick and roll defense, there's not very many teams built this way anymore. But if you're Denver or Philadelphia, somebody whose offense centers around your center, and we don't see that much anymore, your options defensively become limited because of the concern about fouls. In other words, the Lakers are going to go out there with JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard, and even if both of them fouled out in the first half, who cares? Really, the way they play, they didn't even play them against Houston. Yeah. So all Frank Vogel's got to think about on the Murray-Jokic pick and roll is how do we want to play it? Period.
Well, let's talk about that.
Michael Malone's calculus is a little bit different with Jokic. It's just it's a tougher coaching decision.
Well, let's talk about the Murray-Jokic pick and roll because it's intricately linked to some other big questions and simple questions of this series. Number one, as to who guards Jamal Murray, that would be Avery Bradley. Avery Bradley is not here. I suspect it will be Kentavious Caldwell-Pope to start, and they'll do some switching here or there. Number two, the who guards Jokic question is linked to how often are the Lakers playing their centers. And if JaVale and Dwight are on the floor, those guys are going to guard Jokic, and the question becomes, JaVale, Jokic can move backwards in the post and get close to the rim. Dwight has had a better time, as you would expect, sort of not getting moved backwards and making Jokic shoot little flip shots and stuff. But neither of those guys can chase him off the three-point arc. So then you get the pick and pop in play, and we've seen that Jokic in the playoffs decides, I'm shooting all these threes. All these threes I pass up in the regular season, my team can't afford me passing them up. I'm shooting them. And he plays slower centers off the floor. And then you start switching and you get yourself in trouble that way. You move Anthony Davis to center. All of a sudden, I was talking to an executive the other day about just how spectacular Jokic has been. And he said, let's play a game. Let's sit down and list the big men in the league that we think can take away Jokic's three and can deal with him in the post. So you're fast enough to take away his pick and pop three and big enough or long enough to not just get bowled over in the post. The list stopped at two guys. One of them was Anthony Davis. Obviously giving up a ton of weight in the post. Jokic can move him back. If you watch the film, though, he has problems with AD's length. Like, he gets to the 4 or 5 foot range, and the length bothers him. Jokic in the post against the Lakers this year, here are the numbers. Let me see if I can find them. 0.67 points per possession. 0.63 when Jokic shot or passed to a teammate. So that's a very small sample, but not good. And if there's anything that scares me about this matchup for the Nuggets, it's that. It's that the Lakers might have one of the only guys on earth, Bam Adebayo is the other one, who can make it hard for Jokic on both sort of poles of his offensive game. That doesn't mean he can stop him, because he's going to get pick and pop threes, and you're going to send the third defender rotating at him, and that's going to open up passes and all that. But that, to me, the bigger overarching question in the series is, how much Anthony Davis at center are we going to get? Because I just think the Lakers are better that way, and I think there is no matchup for Jokic, but he's one of the only few guys who has a hope at both extremes of his game. Does that make sense?
It does, and then at the other end of the floor, Jokic is in real trouble defensively. Now, I would guess that as the series goes on, Michael Malone will not, if that's the lineup, will not play Jokic on Anthony Davis all the time. I think he'll put Jokic on Caruso, Jokic on, Rondo, and just stay back in the lane and live with whatever those guys do shooting the ball. You've always got options. The thing is, the Lakers have far more options. So to play the Murray-Jokic pick and roll, I think, first of all, they can be more aggressive on the pick and roll, and they can rotate to the pick and pop. I think the one thing we saw with the Lakers against Houston when they were double teaming Harden is their ability to cover a lot of ground in their rotations. And so
they played hard.
Very hard. And I think we'll see it again. And I can see them saying, you know what, we're going to blitz. I'm not saying all the time they'll mix up their looks, but I can see them blitzing Jamal Murray, keeping two on the ball, rotating to Jokic on the pick and pop. And again, maybe they get the ball swung all the way to the corner, and maybe they get a corner three against a late contest. I just know I saw what the Lakers did to Houston, where it was, we're going to come at James Harden, and whatever else happens, we're going to deal with it the best we can. I think you're going to see that same approach from Frank Vogel and the Lakers against Murray and Jokic. We're gonna come at these two guys. We're gonna take them out. This is how we're gonna play the pick and roll. The other option Frank has on the pick and roll that I think we'll see at times late in the game is LeBron James on Murray, not throughout the whole game, Anthony Davis on Jokic, and switch the pick and roll if they're getting hurt on rotation. So they have, the Lakers, the way they're made up, especially defensively, being able to play big or small, they've got a lot of options. Now, The thing I don't like, and it'll be interesting to see what Frank Vogel decides on this, and not just because of the numbers you just shared, just from generally watching him during the year, I don't want to double team Jokic in the post. I will live with whatever he does in the post. And what I'm going to really emphasize off the ball is our body position playing cutters. When the ball goes to Jokic, Anthony Davis, Dwight Howard, JaVale McGee, Markieff Morris, whoever it is, they are on their own down there. And everyone else is going to focus on their man. You're not going to be turning your head and getting lost on a cut, and you're going to play between your man and the basket. Here's the thing with Denver to me. You've got to – Murray and Jokic are Murray and Jokic, and they're going to score some points. They're involved in every play. You can't give them the cuts. You've got to take that away. All those cutting baskets they get with Jokic, those have got to be out. I would work really hard on, that ball goes to Jokic anywhere on the floor, anywhere, not just in the post. The ball's with Jokic, the other four guys, your job is take away the cut. You're not thinking help on Jokic. That guy's on his own one-on-one, and the best thing we can do is have Jokic shooting any kind of two-point shot. We're not giving him any of these cuts.
The amazing thing about the cuts is they're often not open. They're not open by the way we conceive of things being open. There's no passing lane. The defender's right there. But Jokic is so good and so smart and so confident in his accuracy that in his mind, it's open as long as the defender is not looking at the ball. The defender can be draped on Monty Morris. It doesn't matter. He's throwing the pass because if Morris knows it's coming and Morris's defender doesn't, to Nikola Jokic, that means it's open. I'm not even sure what you're supposed to do as a defender, except you've got to be right in stride with your guy, but also be looking at Jokic. That's really hard to do.
It is, but I think, again, it's body position and technique, and you're not, in my opinion anyway, you're not trying to be between Jokic and the cutter to take away the pass. You're trying to be between your man and the basket and to block the cut to the rim. That is my thinking. I'm not going to think I'm going to take away the pass. That dude will make any pass in the world, and he needs about, 2 inches to get the ball through.
He doesn't even need a basketball size amount of space to fit a basketball.
So I'm not going to try to think that I'm going to steal his passes or anything else. I'm going to take away the cut, and it's your body position on the cut. Some of the cuts that Jeremy Grant was getting, to me, against the Clippers were ridiculous. He was simply feeding the post, running his cut through the elbow, and getting the late pass on the other side of the rim. And I'm saying it's terrible body position on the cut, and there's nobody pulling in from the weak side. I'm not that worried about, maybe other than Michael Porter Jr., I'm not worried about him throwing the ball out on the weak side and any of that. I'm taking away the cuts if I'm the Lakers. So, I just don't think with Denver, as good as they are, you just can't let those two guys, Jokic and Murray, beat you. I don't think they've got enough else to beat you if you can limit those guys. And particularly things like that where, it's Jeremy Grant scoring, but it's Jokic that's beating you. You got to take that and I think the Lakers will. I think that their game plans against Lillard before he got hurt, after game one. It's funny, game one's been a problem with them, but then after that they sort of figure it out. But I think their game plans have been really, really good. I think they see themselves as a defensive team. I think they trust what they're doing as a team, and they've got the flexibility to play a lot of different ways. I believe totally in the Lakers' defense, particularly seeing them in the Houston series. I'm still not a believer in their offense. I know it's been better. I don't think I don't think either Houston or the Clippers took away the strengths of the Lakers at all.
You mean the Blazers? Houston or the Blazers?
I mean the Blazers. Houston or the Blazers. I mean, Houston is ridiculous. I mean, you can't be giving those teams close to 70 points in the paint. A Laker team that struggles to shoot the ball, like close down the paint and see if those guys can beat you for the outside. I mean, you just can't get worn out in the paint. And I'm anxious to see with with Denver, if they just take a different take, I'm not saying Michael Malone would say this to his team, but in thinking like, hey, well, look, we're limited in what we can do because of Nikola. We're not a great defensive team. Obviously, we've got to play really hard, do the best we can. But what we're going to focus on 3 things with the Lakers: getting back, which is one of the things Denver did well during the year. They didn't do a great job defensively, but they didn't give up a lot of fast break points. We're going to close down the paint. I mean, to the extreme, to the Milwaukee Bucks extreme of we're going to take away the paint and we're not going to foul. And if you take away the paint, that's easier to do. And if the Lakers are going to have a good offensive series against us, they're going to have to shoot the ball well, which I'm not sold that they can do. I know they shot it pretty well in the last series and the whole thing. Listen, when you're rolling over somebody in 5 games and they're not competing any harder than Houston did, it's easy to shoot the ball when you have a margin for error. There's no pressure on you. I want to see Rajon Rondo. I want to see Markieff Morris. I want to see Danny Green. I'm not saying they can't do it, but I want to see them do that in a 4-point game in the fourth quarter. I want to see them make shots.
I believe in the Lakers' recent offensive surge, in part because, to some degree, because it is linked to them not playing their centers. Because I think that's one of the reasons it surged. So, for instance, with no center on the floor, I think Jeremy Grant will be the number 1 choice to guard LeBron for the Nuggets. I think maybe number 2 will be Millsap. They like that matchup. They've always liked that matchup. Now, Millsap has taken a while to get kind of warmed up in the playoffs. He looked almost unplayable against Utah. He had some very big moments against the Clippers. But if there's no center on the floor and Paul Millsap is on LeBron James, I'm clearing out, putting LeBron at the top of the arc and saying, you can't keep up with my first step. I'm going to the basket. There's no JaVale McGee standing in the dunker spot, so your help has to come from somewhere on the perimeter. And yeah, you're going to make me make those passes and make Alex Caruso and Kyle Kuzma and all the guys you just named shoot threes. But number 1, I'm LeBron James. Sometimes I'm going to dunk. I'm maybe the greatest player ever. You're not going to stop me. Number 2, those guys are going to hit some shots, and if they don't, they'll drive and kick, and someone else will get a better shot. But to your other point, when they put Davis at center and Jokic is guarding him, if and when Jokic is guarding him, because that matchup did materialize in the regular season, and as you said, maybe they get gimmicky and try to hide Jokic on a Caruso, Rondo, whatever, but that matchup's going to happen. I think the Nuggets are going to live with Anthony Davis pick and pop threes. I don't think they're going to send a guy rotating from the corner. I don't think they're going to care that Jokic isn't sprinting at him and running him off the arc. I think they're going to say, look, if you beat us on that shot, we don't have a chance. And so that's going to be an interesting bellwether for me too. If he starts hitting 40% of his open catch and shoot threes, the Nuggets are going to be in big trouble.
But he's not going to shoot many anyway. So
no,
he's
he'll
going to
step
shoot
in
more.
too.
He'll shoot the mid-range, and you're going to live with that a little bit. I'm just totally, to me, like I said, if I'm the Nuggets, some of that stuff I cannot take away. I'm going to get back. I'm going to try to shut down the paint, and I'm going to keep them off the line. And you got to beat me with jump shots because, there's 2 questions. Like, number 1, in any series or in any game, like you can't take away everything. What's most important to take away? With the Lakers, it's stuff at the rim and getting to the free throw line. And number 2, to me, is what can you take away? And I think the Nuggets are limited in what they can take away. If they're going to try to get out and take away a little bit of everything, try to get out on all the 3-point shots and everything and spread out their defense, Now the ball's being driven, and now they're not taking away anything. I'm watching the Milwaukee Bucks film against the Lakers, and that's how I'm going to try to play. I know my personnel's different, but that's how I'm going to try to play. I am going to pack it into the extreme and say, yeah, that's LeBron James, and he certainly can shoot the ball some too, but we're going to give him the same driving lanes that the Miami Heat gave Giannis Antetokounmpo. That's what we're going to give him, those driving lanes, which are none. And throw the ball out to those other guys. And you know what? Let's see if Alex Caruso and Rajon Rondo and Kyle Kuzma are going to knock down shots. And when they miss a few and things get tight, are they making those shots? Because I don't know what else, if you're the Nuggets, I don't know what else you can do. You know, the other thing I'm going to do if I'm the Nuggets is I'm going to double Anthony Davis on every single post up. Again, they don't have a lot of shooting.
Which, by the way, you watch the film, they've done that. They've done that very aggressively. And because they want to make him a passer, I don't think they believe his passing is dangerous enough to hurt them. And they can rotate around the floor and scramble and kill time on the shot clock. But, again, that stuff is much easier when there's no center on the floor. When Anthony Davis posts up on the left block and Dwight Howard is standing on the right block, everyone's got less ground to cover. You overload the floor. Everyone has like 10 feet to rotate. When you take that guy away and everyone else is behind the three-point arc, all the passes for Anthony Davis get easier. All the shots get easier. So, this is, again, I'm not saying the Lakers should mothball their centers again. I think their centers have a place in this series. I just think the deeper you get into the playoffs, the better teams you're playing, the smarter defenses you're playing, it just gets harder and harder and harder to play with a scrunched-in floor. Almost no matter what and how the playoffs unfold, I just think the hook maybe should be a little quick. I mean, what do I know? I don't know. But I just think there's so much more dangerous playing that way, and I don't see a ton of downside to playing that way against the Nuggets. Other than, AD's going to have to guard Jokic, and he might get beat up. He might get in foul trouble, I guess. But we'll see.
Well, the only other problem, though, is you can look at that two ways. I'm not sure that playing five guys out on the perimeter has always opened things up more. I think
that's the Brett Brown school. That's the Brett Brown school of thought. I don't want all
to the rim, or the big guy as a threat in the dunker spot collapses the defense and opens things up going out. I know this, right? If you're not going to have a big in the game, then they've got to get some very good timely cuts when Davis has the ball or the Lakers are coming off pick and rolls. Because if they stand around the perimeter, they just don't have enough guys, to me, around the perimeter that I'm scared of shooting the ball. I'm not saying they're bad shooters, but they don't have, first of all, they don't have a single guy on the Lakers that's just a sticker. We can't give him shots. They don't have one guy like that. And they've got a lot of guys who are below average shooters who can, get on a streak. Who's scaring you on that team? I mean, their best shooter is KCP, and he goes up and down. I mean, who's scaring you? This version of Danny Green?
Depends how open the looks are, I guess, right?
Yeah, but you're not. I mean, obviously you're going to try to close out, but I'm not running by people. I don't know. If I'm playing the Lakers, I'm the Denver Nuggets. To me, again, listen, as a coach, what you'd like to do is take away everything. But this Denver team is limited on the defensive end of the floor personnel-wise. So you just don't have that many different things you can do. I'm going to take away what I can take away, and I'm going to make them make enough jump shots, and they've got to do it at least 4 times in the series. That's how I'm going to try to approach it. I don't buy the Lakers half-court offense. I think they've been up in the playoffs. Listen, in the bubble, they were horrendous offensively. Then they played a terrible defensive Portland team in the first round. I mean, so throw those numbers out the window, because Portland even in the bubble when they made their run to the playoffs, none of it had to do with defense. Terrible defensive team.
But great Twitter team. Great Twitter team. That backcourt on Twitter the other night was as good as NBA Twitter has ever been.
But they play no defense. Okay? And then they were missing Zach Collins, who is maybe their best defender. So they were terrible. And what we found out about Houston's defense is it was more Oklahoma City's offense than it was Houston's defense. I mean, for them to just decide we're not even going to try to help on drives and stuff. So the Lakers haven't played anybody defensively yet. Listen, I love the Lakers. I love the intensity they're playing with. LeBron and AD are the best combination in the league, certainly that's left. There's a lot to like, but I don't buy their half-court offense if you can do something to limit the ball from coming into the paint. I don't buy any of those other guys as
interesting.
threats.
Interesting. You're a little more pessimistic than I am, and them spacing the floor is maybe optimistic about their half-court offense, but we'll see. So I like to think of these series sometimes like, let's boil it down, let's make it simpler, particularly when you have star players. What are the matchups? So if I'm the Nuggets, I'm probably going to open the game with Grant on LeBron, Millsap on Davis, and Jokic on JaVale. Right? That's probably how I'm going. Then the question is, well, what happens when they take their centers out of the game? And then, well, Jokic probably has to guard AD a lot. I want to keep Grant on LeBron. That's my best option on LeBron, I think. Well, then who's Millsap guarding? Can he hang with Kyle Kuzma? In theory, yeah. But when they get the ball popping, it gets a little harder. And so then the matchups become a little interesting. So, I'm pretty confident. Obviously, the best Denver lineup for Anthony Davis at center is Jamal Murray, Gary Harris, Jeremy Grant, and Nikola Jokic. I'm very interested to see how that question mark gets filled. It's tempting to say Torrey Craig because he looks like he should be able to guard LeBron. No one can guard LeBron. He looks like a reasonable facsimile of someone who could maybe not get humiliated by LeBron. He can't. He's actually better against Damian Lillard point guard types than LeBron just bowls him over. Big wings bowl him over. Then you start to wonder, well, can we put Michael Porter Jr. into that question mark and have him guard Kuzma or something and keep Grant on LeBron? I think the matchups get really interesting, and I think the Nuggets actually have that Murray, Harris, Porter, if he's making shots, Grant, Jokic. That's an interesting answer to the AD at center lineup. That's potent maybe on both ends.
Well, yeah, and again, because the Lakers are always going to have, in my mind, on the floor 3 average to below average offensive players. There's matchups for all those other guys. One of the things we didn't talk about, and it's going to be a huge key for the Nuggets, where you have, fewer options, is when they run the perimeter guys setting the pick for LeBron. You're not, if you want Michael Porter in the game for the offensive end of the floor, then what's Michael Porter going to do on those pick and rolls? Because
they're going to hunt Jamal Murray down too.
Right, exactly. And I don't think you want to switch those. Can those guys successfully get out and show on the pick and roll and then allow the guy on the ball, to read the screen and go over or under? Because I think that's going to be a key point. But for the Nuggets, I think you're going to have to maximize the Michael Porter Jr. minutes because, you got to do as well as you can defensively, protect the paint, but you're going to have to score against an outstanding Laker defense. And they're not, my opinion, they are going to do a decent job of limiting the 2 stars. You're going to have somebody else to step up, and he's by far your most reliable offensive weapon. So you're going to have to put him out there. There's plenty of people for him to guard. It's all going to be dependent on when they try to get him into switches, the Nuggets can stay out of switches.
They've switched him onto LeBron a decent amount in the regular season games, and he doesn't look terrible. He looks better doing that than hedging and recovering, although I will say Porter has improved defensively in the run of the playoffs probably more than anyone who's still alive because he just had more room. He doesn't look like the first 3 or 4 games. He looked like they're just going to go at him on every possession, and he has no chance. He doesn't know what he's doing. His rotations have been better. His closeouts have been better. He's been a little better, but yeah, they're gonna hunt those guys. The other thing about the Murray Jokic 2-man game, it's going to be really interesting all the different ways that the Lakers guard it. They have occasionally switched it, and what they will do is so that will leave KCP or whoever on Jokic. Obviously, that's untenable. Jokic is going to put KCP underneath the basket stanchion and lay the ball. I was going to say dunk, but Jokic dunks like once every 10 games. He'll lay the ball in very politely. LeBron will come and rescue KCP and guard Jokic. Like they'll do those like scram switches, the Celtics call them.
Yep.
And that was a really interesting battleground because when Jokic can see that coming, he's got a brief window when they're like mid-switch and he can throw a little quick interior pass. The Lakers were pretty good at shutting that pass off, but that's one of those little games within the game that I think we will see here and there.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt about that. And like I said, I mean, to me, I think the Lakers have a lot of advantages in this series. As much as Denver has defied expectations, especially against the Clippers, I find it hard to see a route to victory for them in this series. And one of the big reasons is the huge advantage the Lakers have is they have a lot of options in terms of how they can match up and how they can play both the pick and rolls and the post-ups on Jokic and everything else. And I don't think Denver has a lot of good options. So Denver's going to have to find some things that they can take away defensively and be consistent in that. And then on offense, it's going to be hard. I just don't see the Lakers. We saw how they played Harden. They're a good defensive team. They have good defenders. They could have played him straight up and probably still won the series. But they decided, hey, we're going to severely limit him and make these other guys play. And I think we're going to see the same thing. They're certainly not going to let both of them just get going the way that the Clippers did.
I would think not. The other thing is this is like Gary Harris, as you said, has been huge, and when they had some success, and this will be a series where I think they feel Will Barton's absence, assuming he remains injured more than they did even against the Clippers. Maybe I don't know if that sounds crazy, but when the Murray Jokic pick and roll doesn't get anything, and Jokic pivots right into a handoff with one of those guys flying up from the corner, Harris or Barton, Denver gets stuff out of that, and particularly against a really good defensive team. When you make them defend that second or third action and it's like flying, like it's popping, there's continuity, like they got some good looks out of that. Now, so did the Lakers. When they put Anthony Davis at center, they start monkeying around with that kind of stuff. Anthony Davis is getting dunks. Anthony Davis as roller is much more interesting to me when they have him at center than Anthony Davis as pick and pop guy. I don't know how much they'll get out of that, but he becomes super dangerous doing that.
Well, there's no question on both of those things. I mean, anytime you can flow and do it well into your second and third options, you're a lot harder to guard, and you're a lot easier to guard if you're going to be a one-option team. There's no doubt about that, and I agree with you on Davis as a roller. But again, if I'm the Nuggets, I'm committing hard to take that roll away. I'm picking him up on the roll. I am just not going to worry about those guys on the perimeter. I'm not saying I'm not going to try to get there, but my first, second, and third priorities are going to be to take away the paint. Okay, so you're going to get beat by KCP, Danny Green, Markieff Morris, Alex Caruso, Kyle Kuzma, and Rajon Rondo? I don't see it. I don't. I mean, and I'm not obviously, those guys can hurt you, and you're obviously not going to shut out LeBron and Anthony Davis, but I'm going to commit to trying to take that paint away. You've got to take away something against the Lakers. And for some reason, it looked to me with Houston, they're switching, and it looked to me like when I looked at their defense, I said, it looks like their priority is to take away the three. And lanes to the basket were just opened up. And Houston has no one at the rim, much like Denver. There's no one going to challenge. And I mean, I'm watching LeBron James make right-handed drives from the three-point line to the rim and laying the ball in the basket. I know this, Zach. You're not winning if that's what you're giving up.
Yeah, you've seen enough of that over your years in the Eastern Conference.
It's
Not that he
hard.
did it against you like more than other teams, but like you've seen enough of LeBron in your coaching career.
Absolutely. And listen, I've always said this about LeBron. Like, he'll get going every once in a while, and he's shot the ball very well in the playoffs so far, and he'll get going from three. And I would always, people are like, you got to get out. No, listen. I mean, you're picking your poison. And so they say, well, what do you do if LeBron makes 5 or 6 threes? I said, you lose and you move on to the next game. Like, you just don't. On the great players and on the best offenses in the league, you can't take it all away. So,
who's had in your coaching career? Who had the outlier shooting game that annoyed you the most? Like, was there a game where like Rondo had 8 threes against you or something? Like, there's got to be a game where you're like, this guy's really going to keep doing this.
In the NBA, I was in Detroit, and Marcus Smart hit 6 threes on us. And this isn't even this version of Marcus Smart. This was early Marcus Smart, and when he was shooting like 25% from 3, and he hit 6 in one game. But the worst I've ever had, in the last game at Wisconsin before I got fired when I was in college, we're playing Indiana, and Andre Patterson, you'll remember him, he played in the league.
Currently works for the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Andre Patterson hit 4 threes on us in a game that went to the last shot. He hit 4 threes against us, or we would have beaten him for the first time in like 20 years at Wisconsin. He hit 4 threes. For his career, Zach, he had 4 threes. Every one of them. Every one of them in our game. Every one of them.
So how hard is it as a coach when that's happening to continue to tell your players, we are not changing anything, ride it out? It's only a 48-minute game. Like, it's not like you have infinite time to ride out the math, but is that hard to stick with it?
Well, it's not as hard to stick with it as a coach. But for players, it's really, really hard. I mean, you see it all the time, right? Like, and I'm talking about before the year. Now, obviously, Jokic has shot it well in the playoffs, but during the year, he's like a 30% three-point shooter. Like, not a
he and Murray in the playoffs become like completely different shooters. It's crazy.
But Jokic, even during the year, he'd make 1 3, and then the next 3 times he'd get guys up on a shot fake and give up the drive. People go for Joel Embiid's shot fake all the time. Drives me crazy. Dude shoots 32%, guys. Like, don't go for the shot fake. Instead, say thank you when he shoots the 3. But it is hard for players. Like, he just made a 3. I don't want to give him another one. I don't want to let him get going. It's tough. I mean, and I think in today's game, it has gotten so hard to defend. The skill level of players is so high. You've got 5 guys a lot of times playing behind the arc. You got multiple guys who can put it on the floor and make plays off the dribble. It is so hard to defend that a lot of it comes down to is discipline defensively. Like, we're not going to take away everything. Like, Jokic is 7 feet. He can get that 3 off. Okay, fine. We're not going to give him the shot fake where he puts it on the floor and goes to the basket. Not giving him that. I'm not going to foul guys on 3s. I'm not going to give up cuts when Jokic has the ball. I'm going to be disciplined in my body position. Like, I know this. Those things you can take away. They're not easy, but with discipline and will, you can take those things away. And then you've got to live with the things that you can't take away. That you've got to live with. And then when they miss, you've got to get the rebound. You've got to block out and get on the boards because, in today's game, it doesn't seem like anybody misses much. And you got to be really disciplined in not fouling people, I think. It's so hard to guard now. Take away what you can take away. And I don't see enough of that. Like, I think we have the best example that we're going to see in a long time in terms of what NBA defense should look like in Lou Dort against James Harden. Obviously a gifted guy defensively, in terms of being able to move his feet, and he's strong. But for a rookie to play with that kind of discipline defensively, he had to one game he fouled him 3 times. But other than that, to play with that kind of discipline. Now, did that mean James Harden didn't score? No. These guys are great players. But take away the easy stuff that sends a guy from 25 to 35 or from 30 to 40. That's how you're going to win games in today's NBA defensively, is at the margins and with that level of discipline.
Well, you know when James Harden hasn't been great, Coach? In game 4 of a pivotal game 4 of like an actual high-level playoff series, James Harden is now at the point where like I'm not that interested in the regular season anymore. Like I have a lot of respect for what he does in the regular season. He's amazing. I voted him MVP with every year he won. I voted him second. He's amazing what he can do. It's less amazing to me now. I don't care about your 40-point game at Charlotte on the second night of a back-to-back anymore. I care Western Conference semifinals, you're down 2-1. I don't care you're up 3-0 in the first round, you have 45 points. Amazing. You're going to win that series anyway. I care about that's where I am with Harden anymore. I just like give me fast forward until game 4, down 2-1 against the Clippers next year. Are you bringing it then? Or are you 2 of 11 with 6 turnovers again? That's where I am with James Harden.
I agree with that, though, and I want to make a point on that, Zach. I think that both players and coaches need to think backwards as they're getting ready for the next season. And by that I mean they've got to look at the playoffs and develop a game individually and as a team that will work in the situations you're talking about. And if it'll work then, it'll work in the regular season, but not necessarily vice versa. And so 2 examples. James Harden, to me, here's one of the big problems. The Lakers took the ball out of his hands. Okay. Compare James Harden once he gives the ball up to Steph Curry. So one of the great things, among many things that Steph Curry does so well, is when you force him to give the ball up, he gives it up and he's on the move. He's on the run, flying around. He's hard to guard off the ball. James Harden gives the ball up and stands there. The possession is over for James Harden. James Harden has to make that change. He has to be willing to move without the ball and change his offensive approach. The Milwaukee Bucks, listen, even if he shoots it a little better, the stars now the guys who can be go-to guys in the playoffs, they can all go get their own shot off the dribble against good defense. And even when you can't create space, they can rise up over the top and knock it down. Anthony Davis can do that, right? 2 dribbles, just up in the air, knock it down. Jason Tatum can do that, right? You've got.
What did you think of the Tatum shot at the end of game 1? What's your coach's take on run out the clock and shoot a step back in a tie game?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the hard thing is, I agree with what Brad did, because the only way to manage the clock, or not the only way, but the easiest way to manage the clock is in a straight isolation. It's hard to manage the clock to take the last shot in a pick and roll or running a guy off a screen or anything else. I don't know how many times Jason Tatum has been in that situation, but he just did a terrible job. I mean, his timing he tried to do something way too late. I don't think he had any plan to what he was doing. I coached what I think was the best guy in my time in the league in Dwayne Wade. In that situation, I'd rather have Dwayne Wade. I mean, listen, what you want is a good shot. Nobody's going to make an overwhelming percentage at that point, but you want to get up a good shot. I don't think there was anybody better than Dwayne, and you were never going to get a chance coming back the other way. And it was never a desperation shot. I mean, he was great. I don't know how many times Tatum's been in that situation. That was a bad possession. But I think it's still, I'm going back to my point, playoffs. You got to go from there. Like Milwaukee, Giannis with the ball behind the three-point arc, trying to wind it up and drive it, not going to work. Might work in the regular season when you had a 1-hour walkthrough to prepare. Not going to work against a Miami Heat, or even for that matter, an Orlando Magic team that just said, we're going to pack it all in and take away the paint. Not going to work. We have to have a different approach. Giannis has to have a different approach. So you've got to go backwards. And James Harden, to me, no matter how many times this comes back in the playoffs, he's just going to come back and play the same way. And if you double, he will willingly give the ball up every time. That's a plus. But then he's just going to stand still and take himself out of the possession. If he's not willing to move without the ball, I think they're going to be met with more of the same no matter who goes in there and coaches them.
Yeah, what I wrote about Harden, because I wrote a big piece that Daryl Morey, of course, didn't like, and called me out on Twitter a little bit about his big game, his record in big games. And what I wrote was something like, he seems to thrive when the game is unfolding in a way that he prefers. And as soon as it's not unfolding in a way that he prefers, so as soon as like there's adversity or behind, there's foul trouble, whatever, or as soon as the defense is dictating the terms of engagement in a way that he doesn't enjoy as much, he fades out a little bit. And like, that's kind of a polite way of saying someone's a front runner almost. Like they, when things are going their way, they're rolling this and that. Like the greatest players, they take control back of the game. Or they take what you're doing and say, you know what, I'm not letting you dictate it. I'm going to do it my way. I'm still going to do or I have this counter, that counter, that counter. Like, there just isn't enough of that. As great as he has been for 10 years now. I think he just has made his 7th All-NBA first team. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's incredible. I just don't sense in him, I don't want to say the will because that sounds so cliche, but just like, I'm taking this game back from you. I'm redictating the terms of it. I don't see that.
See, I look at him differently. I think if you play your basic defense, James Harden's more than willing, more than able, and has shown us in playoff games even that he can take over. I think it's more the habits that he forms all year long and has formed now for a lot of years, which is I'm going to do all of my work with the ball and I'm not willing to work off the ball. And listen, I mean, when you have teams with the quickness of the Lakers coming to double team you, I mean, you're just not going to have much success taking on the double teams. I mean, he did drive away from it a few times and have some success, but you're not going to have sustained success doing that. You're going to have to pass the ball. And so now, can I pass it and get myself back ingrained in the play by moving? To me, his habits have to change. He has to accept playing the game a different way. He has to start the regular season and build some habits that will carry over into the playoffs and not just say, well, this is working fine in the regular season, there's no way to do it. It's almost like you have to keep taking him back. Every time he starts standing, you got to take him back in the film room and say, yeah, but James, here's the Lakers series last year. This is what's going to happen if you play like this. So, yeah, it's working in the regular season, but no, we need to get something that'll work against this. And he's got to develop that, and the team has to develop that over 82 games. You've got to coach backwards from the playoffs.
Interesting.
Back. And so I don't think it's a James Harden afraid of the moment. I don't think it's a James Harden choking. I don't think it's a James Harden unwillingness to try to take over the game. I don't think he has the habits to get himself involved in a game when people are going to take the ball out of his hands like the Lakers did.
3 more quick numbers, then I'll let you go on Nuggets, Lakers. Number 1, Denver was like 9th or 10th in transition defense in the season, according to Cleaning the Glass. That's always important against the Lakers. That bodes decently. Number 2, in just 25 minutes with LeBron and AD on the floor, but no center against the Nuggets, the Lakers were plus 27. So a point a minute. Small sample size may not mean anything, just bears watching. Anthony Davis in the post, 32 post-ups against the Nuggets, 1.35 points per possession when he shot or passed to a teammate who shot. That's monstrous. 1.6 points per possession overall. If those numbers are anywhere close to those figures in this series, the Lakers are going to win. I think the Lakers are. I haven't made my pick yet, but I'm going to pick the Lakers. I think they're going to win this series. But I'll tell you this: like, I'm not. I mean, like I said, I'm picking the Lakers. Sorry, Nuggets. Again, I'm picking against you. But There's no more, like Mike Malone said, this isn't a cute team, man. Jokic and Murray are killers. They are killers, and they are not afraid of anybody.
No, I totally agree with that. I mean, look, those two guys are great. This is a hell of a team. I don't even think that, just in general, that the Lakers are a lot better than them. I just think this matchup affords the Lakers a lot more flexibility in terms of how they can play things. I don't see this being another 7-game series. Again, unless I see something different from the Nuggets defensively. They're not going to just come in with their offense and then let LeBron turn the corner and go to the rim all night long and win the series. But maybe they can change the approach defensively. I just think the Lakers are willing to sell out and not. I don't see Murray and Jokic doing like what they did in Game 7. I don't see the Lakers allowing that. I think if they're going to beat them, the Lakers are going to have some big nights from some other people. And I'm not sure that the Lakers guys are up. I mean, that Denver's guys are up to that. I just don't see the Lakers allowing Murray and Jokic to go get 60 or 70 in a game. I don't see that.
Well, Denver not giving us a 7-game series is like Springsteen not playing Born in the USA or something. At this point, you owe it. It's not. You got to play the hits. And Denver's a 7-game series. You got to get us to 7 somehow. I mean, that's what they do.
I would love it. We would all love it. I mean, there's nothing better than those long series. And for me to see all the adjustments and things, there's nothing better. But I just think that Frank Vogel and the Lakers are going to take at least one of those stars out. I don't know if Denver's got enough other than those two guys.
All right, Coach Van Gundy, you've been very generous with your time. Your analysis is it's second to none. It's been awesome hearing you on TV. Thanks for giving us some time and being generous with it. And just thanks for everything. It's been great listening to you.
Thanks, Zach.